Hello, everybody, and welcome to Common Sense with Curtis Scott. And I'm here today with Grace Pandithurai for a judge of Ellis County, the 443rd District Court. How are you doing, Grace?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Good morning, everybody.
All right, well, thank you for coming on. If you could just give us a little intro or a bio of who you are.
Sure. So my name is Grace Pandithurai. I am your chief felony prosecutor currently here in Ellis County and have been a prosecutor now for the last 14 years serving our community. I've worked in Ellis County for the last 9. Ellis County is my hometown. I grew up right here in Midlothian, and so it's my honor to be serving in this capacity, and it's my deep honor to be running for judge. I did my undergrad at Southern Methodist. I did my master's degree at Dallas Baptist, and then I chose to go to law school at Regent University because I wanted to learn law from a faith-based perspective, but also about 92% of their students come out into public service, and I knew that was the kind of work I wanted to do. As a prosecutor, I've tried so many felony jury trials, anything from drugs to capital murders, but my passion has been cases where kids have been hurt. That's really where I believe God has used me to help protect families and also do work for our community. A few months ago, I had the deep honor of trying our very first human trafficking case here in Ellis County and was able to secure a life verdict on that case. And it's something that I'm incredibly proud of. I love helping our law enforcement do what they need to do to continue to keep our community safe. But at the same time, as a prosecutor, we've had to make some tough calls, tough decisions. And I know that discernment will help me be fair and impartial on the bench.
All right. I'm sorry there. Just having a little bit of technical difficulty switching back to the screen. But so yeah. You said how many years have you been? You said 14?
Sure. Yes, I've been a prosecutor now for 14 years. I started in 2011. It was my very first job out of law school in Wichita Falls, Texas. And then I came home and was a defense attorney for about 3 months. And then Patrick Wilson hired me to work at the DA's office, and I've been there ever since.
Okay. Yeah, because I just want to make sure. So you've been here in this area for a lot of the time then?
Yes, sir. Almost 10 years. Yeah.
You know Ellis County pretty well, I guess.
I do. Not only did I come back as an adult, this is the place where I dreamed as a child. You know, I ran into one of my old elementary school and middle school teachers a few months ago, and they were reminding me I used to run around going, I can't wait to be a judge. So the fact that this opportunity is here and I felt like it was time for me to try is pretty outstanding.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to ask a couple questions here for all the viewers today, and I'm going to have it down at the bottom of the screen. But the first question is, why are you running for Ellis County 443rd District Judge?
Sure. So one of the things that really drove me was, as a child, I knew it's what I wanted to do. But at that time, I don't think I understood what being a judge actually was. And now that I've been in a courtroom for the last 10 years, trying actual felony cases time and time again, I see the importance of having a judge who has experience, who has actually argued those things in the courtroom, who has handled suppression hearings, who has made tough decisions, because each one of those decisions impacts our community, whether you're in the courtroom having a court case heard yourself, or whether you want to our community continue to be protected. That's only going to happen with a judge who's actually had trial experience, which is one of the main reasons why I decided to run. I also think it's really important for our law enforcement to have someone in there who understands the law that they're facing, right? Because, you know, as a police officer, whatever you do, we want that to get into evidence, right? And so you need a judge who knows what the Constitution says about search and seizure and warrants, how to apply it, so that we make sure everything that law enforcement doing is correct and can be entered into evidence later on.
Okay, sounds great. It's funny, I do all these questions, and I do this with the questions just so that people can see the question. Helps keep me on track. I believe in the keep it simple, stupid method from my Marine Corps days. So the thing, though, that you hit on some of the things I'll be asking again, but I just like to give each question so we get a specific point. And so my next question for you is, what do you feel makes you the best candidate for judge at District 444?
Sure. I think what makes me the best candidate is that I'm uniquely qualified in the number of jury trials I've actually participated in, be that from jury selection or helping select a jury, all the way to presenting evidence, doing pretrial hearings, doing evidentiary hearings, which is where we put our arguments before the judge and the judge gets to decide if that evidence is coming in, all the way to closing arguments. But I also think what's so unique about my experience is the number of witnesses and vulnerable people that I've put on the stand to testify, right? There are laws in place that a judge needs to know that can help protect a child when they testify or help protect a witness when they testify so that they don't have to be worried about being beaten up or yelled at or screamed at. Mind you, each party has a job to do and they are going to be open to full cross-examination because that's the way we do things and it's important. But there are rules in place to make that process easier so it's not so intimidating, so that the jury is hearing the whole truth without any kind of slant. And I think understanding those rules, because I've argued them before the judge, is important to ensuring that our courtroom is fair and impartial. So I believe my trial experience and my experience with managing a felony docket sets me apart and makes me the best candidate for this position.
Awesome. So, about how many cases do you think you like try in a year and stuff like that, or how much have you done in your lifetime?
Sure. So I have done dozens and dozens and dozens of cases, tried over the span of 2011 to 2024, starting with presenting cases on behalf of abused children when their parents can't seem to pull the classes together. And those to me were some of the most devastating, right? Because it's a family. That's not having to do with criminal law. That was having to do with civil law. And my entire first year of practicing as a prosecutor was presenting those cases to a jury and deciding where a child was going to live after they experienced extreme abuse. After about doing that work for a year and a half, the first assistant, who is now the elected district attorney in Wichita Falls, was said, "Hey, Grace, we're going to pull you up and you're going to start doing felonies." And from that point forward, I have been trying felony criminal cases. My second year in practice, I tried our very first, or one of our first, abusive head trauma cases with the elected district attorney in Wichita Falls. That case took us about 4 weeks. Boy, let me tell you about learning on the fly, having to learn the science, having to learn how to present those kinds of cases to a judge and what evidence I could put forward and what evidence I knew a judge was going to say, no, that can't come forward. And so I know I have that kind of experience we can count on. And then when I moved to Ellis County and I came back home, I started on working on cases where kids were abused. And I've tried several drug cases, theft cases, murder cases, capital murder cases. But I think the case that I'm most proud of, or the one that's going to mark my heart forever, was trying our first human trafficking case here in Ellis County. Having to walk that victim through what she went through and learn about her grieving process, but also figure out what evidence I could put forward before the judge and which I needed to pull back, was an incredible learning experience. It was my honor to present her case to the jury and the judge, and we were able to secure a life verdict on that case. sorry, Chris, I can't hear you anymore.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay. Yeah, I'm hearing some feedback and stuff too, and that's where I was asking. So I don't know what happened with my mic. I think it might be it. But so, can you explain the role of Ellis County 443rd District Judge? A lot of people out there, I mean, they know that a judge does trials and everything, but I think there's a little bit more if you read in the laws of what a judge does.
Sure.
Explain that role, please.
So on the 443rd District Court right now hears criminal felony cases. And so Judge Wallace and Judge Carroll and Judge Ermatinger got together at the beginning of 2020 to think about how can we keep moving forward efficiently to handle caseloads during COVID. And so one of the reasons why all the criminal cases were put in the 443rd was to help us manage the WebEx docket. Because for many, many months during 2020, we were still moving cases or attempting to move cases through WebEx. Now, we couldn't do any cases where people needed to go to prison or take time, and we couldn't do any cases that needed a jury trial, but we still had a docket every day or a court hearing every day on WebEx. And so in order to do that efficiently, we separated the civil and the criminal cases. So right now, the 443rd District Court is in charge of every single felony case that is indicted in Ellis County. So what that means is hearing cases when a defense attorney and the state have reached a plea agreement, taking care of those cases, but also hearing contested hearings. So like say we don't agree on a piece of evidence that needs to come in, we'll have something called the suppression hearing, and the judge has to make those decisions. It's the judge's job to make decisions on the law. And then if the parties choose to go to the jury, it's the jury's job to make decisions on the facts and see if the state has proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. At that point, it's the judge's job to decide if the state and the defense are doing their job properly, making sure they're not trying to get into things that they shouldn't because the law doesn't allow them to. And then sometimes the judge in the 443rd also has to hear hearings. So they might decide, I don't want a jury to hear this. I want the judge to hear this. And so then the judge is going to decide on whether someone is guilty or innocent, and the judge is going to set punishment. Another thing that the judge does in the 443rd is hear probation revocations. So that happens when someone is placed on probation, they're given a set of rules to follow. And then if they don't follow them, the state can file a motion to have their probation revoked. And if the state and the defense don't reach an agreement together, then the judge gets to decide if it's more likely or not that they violated their probation and then decide what that sentence will be. And that is solely within the realm of the judge of the 443rd. And lastly, the judge also reviews search warrants. So whenever a police officer wants to go into a place, collect a piece of evidence, search a phone, or try to find someone using cell phone towers, the judge has to review those affidavits, make sure there's PC in them, make sure the law is being followed before that police officer can go and search and seize those items. So there's lots of different things pertaining to criminal felony cases that the 443rd judge is in charge of.
So speaking of the search warrants and everything like that, and I think that's where a lot of people don't understand. Me being a police officer, I know this, but so what you're saying is you'd have a 24/7 job?
Exactly, a 24/7 job. And I think that, I know that Judge Wallace and Judge Carroll also help with those things, so that burden is not just on one person.
Yes, and I know it's got to be a certain type of judge, and a lot of people, I could give out all sorts of things, but yes, there's only so many judges that we can reach out to here in Ellis County that we can go out and get a search warrant signed. So it could be 2:00 in the morning for just a blood draw for the DWI.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that, and we'll go on to the next question. And so next question is, what do you believe is the most significant role of the Ellis County 443rd District Judge? I know you just gave some of these roles or whatever, but what do you believe is the most significant role?
Sure. So every single task that the judge does in the 443rd, I think is pretty significant. Speaking from someone who is actually practicing in that court now, the judge sets the tone for how people are going to be treated in that courtroom. The judge sets the tone for how quickly those cases are going to be moved. The judge sets the tone for fairness and justice in that courtroom. So I think what is most important to set all of those things is having a judge with experience, someone who has actually argued case law before a judge, someone who has actually picked a jury trial, someone who has actually made closing arguments, who has worked on felony criminal cases, because right now those are the types of cases that are being heard. And when you think about it, those are the types of cases in a district court that deal with someone's life and liberty. Why wouldn't we want a judge with experience making those kinds of decisions? Because every person in our courtroom, whether that be defendant, defendant's parents, state's witnesses, victims, every single one of those people is a citizen in Ellis County or living in Ellis County or came through Ellis County. And so when we're thinking about how justice applies, it applies to each one of them, no matter who they are, no matter what they did, no matter what the accusation is that's being brought before the court. And so in order to ensure fairness to each party, but also toughness when the facts and law justify it, we need a judge with trial experience.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and move along to the next question. And we talked a little bit about how you've been doing cases and everything like that, the trials that go forth. So approximately how many cases does the court handle in a year?
Sure. So I looked at this number this morning, and last year, the 443rd District Court had over 2,000 cases filed in it. 2,000 cases. So think about that. 2,000 felony cases, varying from state jail felonies, which is normally our low-level drug offenses, all the way up to capital murder. So when you think about that number, you also have to think about the types of cases they are, because we're not talking about low-level drug cases anymore. That used to be the largest number of our cases. But we have several aggravated sexual assaults of a child, capital murders, intox manslaughters, murders that are pending in that courtroom, which are going to take a little bit more time and definitely need a lot more experience in order for them to be handled properly.
Yeah, that's a lot of cases. And I know we had the DAs on, there are candidates for DA on, and the DA. And they talked about how many cases and everything and how many get fled out and stuff like that. Because, I mean, there's no way you can do 2,000 cases in 365 days.
No, you can't, right? And so many of those cases hopefully can be reached through plea agreements. But once a plea agreement is reached, so let's say the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement. Now we need space on the court docket to hear it, because it's not finished until it's actually pled in front of the judge. And it's another reason why I think we need someone with experience, because I understand what that means when there's a delay in hearing those cases. We need to get them on quickly so that we can have those cases resolved, so those defendants can move on to what they need to do next, and the victims can move on and try and heal from what they've gone through.
I really appreciate you answering these questions. So it kind of leads into my next question.
Sure.
And, you know, the world we're living in, you see some counties, and there's been some laws made about this, but there's some counties that have been doing things. I've worked in Dallas County before, and I had a judge drop a case. Because I won't talk about it, but they dropped the case for no reason, really. And that's where I asked this right here. Would you ever support not accepting or dropping certain types of charges? Like, I mean, would that ever cross your mind?
Sure. So I will tell you, as a judge, it's not my job to decide whether I'm going to drop or accept a case unless I'm asked to give a directed verdict. And what that means is when somebody says, hey, we're in a trial and I don't believe this party has proved their elements, judge, so you need to dismiss it now. And if I'm asked and I need to make that decision, I'm not afraid to. But a judge's job isn't to decide what cases get heard and what cases don't. Their job is to hear every case that's filed in that office, right? Now, they may have to make a decision on whether that case is dismissed if someone asks for the case to dismiss, but a judge is not supposed to sua sponte kick cases. That's not how that works.
So can you explain the words you just said for our
Sure.
viewers?
So sua sponte means on their own. Like a judge isn't allowed to decide because the judge isn't in charge of filing cases. That's the party's job. So a state will file an indictment. The state gets to decide whether they want to go forward on charges or not. The state gets to decide if they want to dismiss it. Now, there may be an opportunity, like I said earlier, where we're in the middle of trial and a party says, hey, the state didn't prove all their burden. Judge, you've got to dismiss this case right now. And I will tell you that if the state didn't do their job and put on each and every element, I have no problem giving a directed verdict because a judge is supposed to make hard decisions, not based on who they like the most, but based on the law and based on the law that is presented in that courtroom, not add different laws, not add their personal opinions, not add their feelings. And I promise that is the type of judge I'm going to be because that's the type of judge I want to practice in front of.
Yeah, and I asked that because, like I said, I've had that happen firsthand where I've seen a judge drop some cases. It was misdemeanor, but still, it was something I put a lot of hard work into as an officer. So
Sure.
We'll go ahead, though. I like to keep this focused on the question and focused on letting the viewers hear your voice.
Yeah.
So my next question is two questions kind of combined together. And it's, do you believe the Constitution or the Bill of Rights are the supreme law of the land? And what is their significance to the judge of the 443rd District?
Sure. So it is most definitely the supreme law of the land. And one of the things that I think is most important is the text and the words of the Constitution. They are just what they are, period. There's no changing them, there's no adding to them. A judge's job is solely to interpret them and make sure they are applied to every single person who is in their courtroom. So, as the judge of the 443rd, that should be the utmost priority of every single case that is in that courtroom. Because when you're thinking about the Bill of Rights, you're thinking about the rights that apply to both an accused person of crime, but also the rights of a victim, right? And so both of those things need to be measured and weighed, and they can't be changed, period. No matter how long a defendant's rap history is, if things weren't seized properly as the Constitution says they should be, that evidence can't come in this case, right? And so it's so important to have a judge who knows them. And the way that affects our victims is, let's say you don't have a judge who doesn't know what that is and has never argued it and has never practiced it, and they rule off their emotions, and then that case gets appealed, meaning it goes to a higher court and they said, hey, there's a problem, you've got to do it again. Think about that in context of a case where a child has to testify. That means that child has to walk back into the courtroom and do it all over again. So it's not just about protecting our and our suspects. It's also about making sure our children who have been victims of crimes don't have to do things more than once. That's why you need a judge who understands the Constitution and knows how to apply it, because it is the utmost important in that courtroom.
Sounds great. Sorry, we're getting a little bit of feedback there. Okay, that sounds better. So speaking of, what is their significance for the judge too? Is it not also in the Texas Constitution? Doesn't it kind of state how the judges are formed, everything like that? I think the Constitution says something
100%. And the Texas Constitution also speaks about how every accused person has a right to a speedy trial and a public trial. And boy, howdy, if that is not at the front foremost thought of any judge who's handling a docket, then you're set to fail from the very beginning, right? A judge needs to know that is always going to be there. And so part of a judge's job should be, how am I moving things timely, but also effectively? And if you don't know those things in the Constitution, you can't do it. It really is, both the US and the state constitution are the foundations for every courtroom, whether they be criminal or civil.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time. And what I want to do now is basically give you a little time to your campaign speech, I guess we would say. It's just tell the voters why, why you're running, everything wrapped up in a little final bow of conclusion, if you would say, of who you are and why they should vote.
Sure. So I am running because I want to be your next law and order judge. After 14 years of serving as a prosecutor in the prosecutor's office, I know I have the experience you can count on to continue to keep our community safe, but at the same time, be fair and impartial. As a prosecutor, I am one of the only attorneys that is charged to seek justice, which means we're already looking out for both sets, the rights of a defendant as well as what's happening with our victims. I have had to make the tough calls time and time again, which makes me know I am ready to do that as a judge. It's my vow to be a constitutional conservative. As you've heard throughout our talk today, I don't intend to twist the Constitution into something it's not. The words are what they are, period. And no judge should make up laws while they're sitting on the bench. I also intend to have a courtroom that it respects every person who walks in it. Every person. Because no one comes into that courtroom thinking everything is great. It's not. It's traumatic and it's stressful. So you need a judge who's poised, who has experience, who's not afraid to make the tough call, but who's willing to make timely and wise decisions. And I know I can do this for this community because I've got 14 years of experience behind me. To boot, I am uniquely qualified because I have 14 years of trial experience behind me. So now I know that I can move our docket effectively and efficiently. And I would be honored to be your next law and order judge.
Well, thank you very much, Grace. I really appreciate you coming on today. And for all of you out there, I'm going to be interviewing all the other candidates too. But if you would like, subscribe, hit, all those buttons that would share this too, because we need to have the voters hear the voices of the candidates. And that's part of, how our nation was founded was it's a republic to where you vote on people that are going to represent you. So go out and vote, hit like, share, all that good stuff. But I really appreciate everybody that's watching this, and I really appreciate your time, Grace.
Thank you so much.
If you don't have anything else, we'll go ahead and call it a day.
Don't forget to vote.